In the labyrinthine canals of Venice, where the water whispers secrets and the air is thick with history, a sinister presence lurked. Tourists often marveled at the city's beauty, unaware of the malevolence that lingered just beneath the surface. Late one night, a group of friends decided to take a gondola ride. Their gondolier, an old man with a weathered face and piercing eyes, silently guided them through the narrow waterways. The city seemed eerily quiet, and the moon cast long shadows on the water. As they glided past an ancient, crumbling palace, one of the friends, Elena, spotted a figure in the window. She squinted, trying to make out the details. It was a woman, pale and ghostly, her eyes hollow and her mouth open in a silent scream. Elena gasped, but when she pointed out the figure to her friends, it had vanished. The gondolier continued, unfazed, but the friends grew increasingly uneasy. They whispered about the legends of Venice, of the spirits that haunted the old buildings and the canals. As they turned a corner, the air grew colder, and a thick fog enveloped the gondola. Out of the mist, a dark shape emerged. It was a gondola, much like their own, but it seemed to be from another time. The passengers were dressed in old-fashioned clothes, their faces pale and expressionless. The friend's gondola bumped against the other, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Elena felt a cold hand grip her arm. She turned and saw the woman from the window, now standing beside her. The woman's eyes were filled with sorrow and anger. Elena's scream pierced the night, and the gondola rocked violently. The fog lifted as suddenly as it had appeared, and the ghostly gondola was gone. The friend's gondolier spoke for the first time, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. "Venice has many secrets," he said. Some are best left undiscovered." They returned to their hotel, shaken and silent. Elena couldn't shake the feeling of the cold hand on her arm. That night, she dreamt of the woman, trapped in the decaying palace, her soul forever bound to the shadows of Venice. Years later, Elena returned to Venice, drawn by an inexplicable compulsion. She rented a small apartment near the palace and began to investigate its history. She discovered that the woman was a noblewoman, betrayed and murdered by her lover centuries ago. Her spirit, unable to find peace, haunted the canals, seeking vengeance. Elena realized that the woman's touch had marked her. She began to see the ghostly figures more frequently, their pale faces haunting her dreams and waking moments. The city, once beautiful and enchanting, now felt like a prison of shadows. One night, driven by a sense of urgency, Elena returned to the palace. She climbed the crumbling stairs and found herself in the room where she had first seen the ghostly figure. The air was thick with sorrow and anger. She whispered a prayer for the woman, asking for her forgiveness and offering her peace. The room grew colder, and the ghost appeared before her. For a moment, their eyes met, and Elena felt the weight of centuries of pain and betrayal. Then, slowly, the ghost began to fade, her expression softening. Elena left the palace, feeling a sense of closure. The ghosts of Venice still lingered, but they no longer haunted her. She had given them a measure of peace, and in doing so, had freed herself from their grasp. Yet, every now and then, she would catch a glimpse of a pale figure in the corner of her eye, a reminder that the shadows of Venice were never truly gone. Beneath the historic and cobblestone streets of Edinburgh lies a network of dark, damp, and forgotten vaults. These subterranean chambers, abandoned for centuries, hold the echoes of the past, whispers of lives long lost. Tourists often visit these vaults, seeking a thrill, but few understand the true horror that dwells within. One evening, a group of friends decided to take a ghost tour of the vaults. Their guide, a charismatic storyteller, led them through the narrow passages, regaling them with tales of the city's dark history. The air grew colder as they descended deeper, and the flickering lanterns cast eerie shadows on the walls. As they ventured further, the guide paused before a heavy, iron door. This is the most haunted part of the vaults, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Many have entered, but not all have returned. The friends exchanged nervous glances, but followed the guide through the door. Inside, the air was thick with moisture and the smell of decay. The walls were lined with ancient carvings and the remnants of old, forgotten belongings. One of the friends, Mark, felt a sudden chill and turned to see a shadowy figure lurking in the corner. It seemed to be watching them, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The guide continued his tales, but Mark couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As they moved through the chamber, he lagged behind, drawn to the shadowy figure. When he approached, it vanished, leaving only a cold, empty space. Suddenly, the lanterns flickered and went out. The group was plunged into darkness, and panic set in. The guide's voice was lost in the chaos, and the friends clung to each other, trying to find their way back. In the pitch black, Mark felt a cold hand grasp his shoulder. He turned, but there was no one there. A soft whisper filled the air, barely audible over the sound of their frantic breathing. Help me," it said, the voice filled with sorrow. Mark's heart pounded as he fumbled for his flashlight. When he finally managed to turn it on, he saw the figure again, standing just a few feet away. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow and filled with despair. Who are you?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. The woman didn't answer but reached out a hand, pointing towards a dark alcove. Compelled by an unseen force, Mark moved towards it, his friends calling after him. In the alcove, he found a small, weathered box. Inside were old letters, brittle with age. He scanned the faded writing, piecing together a tragic story of love and betrayal. The woman had been imprisoned in the vaults by her lover, left to die in the darkness. Her spirit, unable to find peace, haunted the tunnels, seeking someone to uncover her story. Mark shared the letters with the guide and his friends. The guide, visibly shaken, admitted that he had heard tales of the woman's ghost, but had never believed them. They left the vaults, the atmosphere heavy with the weight of the discovery. That night, Mark dreamt of the woman, her sorrowful eyes pleading for justice. He woke with a sense of purpose and spent the following weeks researching her story, bringing her tragic fate to light. The local media picked up the tale, and the city mourned for the forgotten woman. As her story spread, the sightings of her ghost dwindled. Mark visited the vaults one last time, leaving flowers in the alcove where he had found the letters. He whispered a prayer for her peace, and the air grew warmer, the oppressive darkness lifting slightly. The vaults of Edinburgh remain a popular attraction, but those who visit them now feel a sense of calm, as if a lingering sorrow has finally been laid to rest. Mark moved on with his life, but he never forgot the ghostly woman who had reached out to him from the shadows, her story forever etched in his memory. In the heart of New Orleans, where the air is thick with the scent of magnolias and the streets echo with the sound of jazz, there lies a house shrouded in mystery and darkness. Known to locals as the LaLaurie Mansion, its history is steeped in tales of cruelty and the supernatural. One sweltering summer, a group of college students, intrigued by the mansion's gruesome past, decided to investigate. They rented a room in a nearby hotel and spent their days exploring the vibrant city and their nights delving into the mansion's history. They learned of Madame Delphine LaLaurie, a socialite known for her beauty and charm, but also for her horrifying treatment of slaves. Determined to uncover the truth, the students managed to gain access to the mansion. They entered cautiously, the heavy wooden doors creaking ominously. The air inside was stale, and the walls seemed to hum with a sinister energy. As they explored, they felt an oppressive presence, as if the house itself were watching them. One of the students, Jessica, was particularly sensitive to the paranormal. She wandered into a small, dimly lit room at the back of the house. The room was cold, despite the sweltering heat outside. She shivered and turned to leave, but stopped when she saw a figure in the corner. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered, old-fashioned gown. Her eyes were filled with a deep sadness, and she seemed to be muttering something. Jessica strained to hear, her heart pounding. The woman's voice was faint but clear. "Help us," she whispered. Please, help us." Jessica felt a surge of empathy and fear. She called to her friends, who hurried into the room. The woman had vanished, but the cold lingered. Jessica described what she had seen, and they decided to conduct a seance that night, hoping to communicate with the spirits trapped in the mansion. As the sun set and the city came alive with music and laughter, the students gathered in the room, candles flickering around them. They joined hands and called out to the spirits. The air grew colder, and the candles' flames wavered. Suddenly, the room was filled with whispers, voices overlapping in a desperate chorus. Jessica felt a cold hand grip hers, and she gasped. Who are you?" She asked, her voice trembling. The whispers grew louder, and a figure materialized before them. It was the woman Jessica had seen earlier. "We are the forgotten," she said, her voice filled with sorrow. "We were wronged, and our souls cannot rest." The students listened in horror as the woman recounted the brutal treatment she and others had endured at the hands of Madame LaLaurie. Their spirits had been trapped in the mansion, unable to find peace. The woman pleaded with them to help uncover the truth and bring justice to their tormentor. Determined to help, the students began researching the mansion's history in earnest. They uncovered old records and accounts of the atrocities committed within its walls. They shared their findings with local historians and journalists, sparking a renewed interest in the mansion's dark past. As the truth emerged, the city was appalled by the horrors that had been hidden for so long. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and prestige, became a stark reminder of the cruelty that had been inflicted on innocent lives. The students returned to the mansion one last time, hoping to see the spirits they had helped. In the same dimly lit room, they felt a sudden warmth, and the woman appeared before them once more. Her eyes, no longer filled with sadness, shone with gratitude. Thank you, she said, her voice soft and clear. We can finally rest." With that, she faded into the shadows, leaving the room bathed in an eerie calm. The LaLaurie Mansion remains a haunted landmark in New Orleans, but the spirits that once dwelled there have found peace, thanks to the efforts of a group of determined students. Jessica and her friends left the city with a sense of closure, forever changed by their encounter with the restless souls of the past. Prague, with its Gothic architecture and cobblestone streets, is a city that seems to exist between worlds. Its history is rich with legends of alchemists, witches, and restless spirits. One such legend is that of the golem, a creature said to have been created from clay to protect the Jewish quarter in times of peril. One autumn, a group of history enthusiasts decided to explore the lesser-known legends of Prague. They arrived in the city, their minds filled with tales of magic and mystery. They visited the old Jewish cemetery, where the tombstones leaned precariously, and the air was thick with the weight of centuries. One night, they ventured into the heart of the old town, guided by a local historian who shared stories of the golem. The historian led them to an ancient, abandoned synagogue, its walls covered in ivy and its windows dark and foreboding. Inside, the air was musty, and the floor creaked underfoot. The historian recounted the tale of Rabbi Lowe, who had created the golem to protect the Jewish community from persecution. According to legend, the golem still wandered the city, its spirit restless and vengeful. As they listened, one of the group members, Alex, felt a strange pull towards the back of the synagogue. He moved quietly, his footsteps echoing in the silent hall. He found a small, hidden door, its wood worn and splintered. Without thinking, he pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was dark, but Alex felt an overwhelming presence. He fumbled for his flashlight and saw, in the corner, a large, clay figure. It was the golem, its eyes lifeless but its form imposing. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind him. The others heard the noise and rushed to find Alex. They found him staring at the golem, his face pale. The historian joined them, his expression grave. The golem is said to awaken in times of great need, he said. It seems you have disturbed its rest. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and the golem's eyes glowed with an eerie light. The group backed away, fear gripping their hearts. The golem stepped forward, its movements slow but deliberate. It reached out a hand, and the historian shouted for them to run. They fled the synagogue, the golem's heavy footsteps echoing behind them. They didn't stop until they reached the safety of their hotel. That night, Alex dreamt of the golem, its eyes burning with anger and sorrow. He woke in a cold sweat, determined to understand why the creature had awakened. The next day, they met with the historian again, who explained that the golem was a protector, but it could also be a harbinger of doom. It awakened only when the community was in grave danger. Alex and his friends scoured the news, looking for any sign of impending disaster. They discovered that a group of extremists had been planning an attack on the Jewish quarter, intent on sowing fear and chaos. Armed with this knowledge, they alerted the authorities, who managed to thwart the plot. The city breathed a sigh of relief, and the community was safe. The group returned to the synagogue, hoping to see the golem one last time. Inside, they found the clay figure, now lifeless and still. The historian smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude. The golem's work is done, he said. You have helped protect the city. As they left Prague, the group felt a deep connection to the city's history and its legends. They had witnessed the power of the past and the ways in which it could reach into the present. The golem, once a creature of myth, had become a guardian once more, its spirit finding peace in the protection of its people. Tokyo, a city of neon lights and bustling streets, hides many secrets beneath its modern facade. In the heart of the city, amid the towering skyscrapers, lies an old, abandoned hospital, its walls crumbling and its halls echoing with the memories of the past. One evening, a group of urban explorers decided to investigate the hospital. They had heard stories of strange occurrences and ghostly apparitions. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they entered the building, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay. As they explored the dark, empty corridors, they felt a sense of unease. The hospital had been closed for decades, and the stories they had heard played on their minds. One of the explorers, Yuki, was particularly sensitive to the paranormal. She felt a cold chill as they passed the old operating room. "As something happened here," she whispered, her voice trembling. The others gathered around, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. They noticed a faint, glowing light coming from a nearby room. Intrigued, they followed it, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Inside, they found a small, sterile room, its walls lined with old medical equipment. In the center of the room stood a figure, its back turned to them. The figure was dressed in a tattered hospital gown, its head bowed. Yuki felt a surge of fear and compassion. "Are you all right?" as she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure turned slowly, revealing a gaunt, pale face. Its eyes were hollow, and its expression was one of deep sorrow. "Help me," it said, its voice echoing through the room. The explorers felt a wave of cold wash over them, and the figure began to fade. Determined to understand what they had seen, the group delved into the hospital's history. They discovered that it had once been a thriving institution, but a tragic accident had led to its closure. A fire had broken out in the operating room, trapping several patients and staff inside. Many had perished, and their spirits were said to haunt the hospital. Yuki felt a strong connection to the ghostly figure and decided to return to the hospital alone. She entered the operating room, now a charred and crumbling shell. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and the weight of the past. She called out to the spirits, hoping to bring them peace. I know what happened here, she said, her voice echoing in the empty room. I'm here to help. The room grew colder, and the ghostly figure appeared before her once more. The figure's expression was one of sorrow and desperation. And we were trapped, it said, its voice a mournful whisper. We couldn't escape. Yuki felt tears welling up in her eyes. I'm so sorry, she said. I'll help you find peace. She spent the following weeks researching the fire, uncovering old records and speaking with survivors. She learned that the fire had been caused by a faulty electrical system, and that the hospital had been abandoned without proper investigation or closure for the victims. Yuki shared her findings with local authorities and historians. A memorial was established at the site of the hospital, honoring those who had lost their lives in the fire. The spirits, once trapped in their sorrow, began to find peace. Yuki returned to the hospital one last time, standing in the now silent operating room. The ghostly figure appeared before her, its expression no longer one of sorrow but of gratitude. Thank you, it said, its voice soft and clear. We can finally rest. As Yuki left the hospital, she felt a sense of closure and peace. The city of Tokyo continued to thrive, its modern streets bustling with life. But beneath the surface, the spirits of the past had found a measure of solace, thanks to one woman's determination to uncover the truth and bring them the peace they deserved. These 5 stories of haunted cities showcase the interplay between history and the supernatural, drawing readers into the eerie and often tragic pasts that continue to influence the present. Paris, the City of Light, is famous for its romantic charm, iconic landmarks, and rich history. However, beneath its bustling streets lies a network of dark, forgotten tunnels that hold secrets and horrors unknown to the surface world. One autumn, a group of explorers decided to delve into the Paris catacombs, eager to uncover its mysteries. They entered through a hidden entrance, navigating the maze of tunnels and passageways lined with the bones of millions. The air was cool and damp, and their footsteps echoed eerily in the silence. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled upon a sealed-off section, marked with warnings in ancient French. Ignoring the signs, they pried open the old iron gate and entered a tunnel that had been closed for centuries. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over them. One of the explorers, Sophie, felt a chill run down her spine. She heard faint whispers, indistinct but insistent. She turned to her friends, but they seemed unaware of the voices. As they continued, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. They entered a large, cavernous chamber, its walls covered in strange, undecipherable symbols. In the center stood an altar, ancient and stained with dark, dried blood. Sophie felt a sudden dread, realizing they had stumbled upon something forbidden. Suddenly, the whispers ceased, replaced by a deafening silence. The air grew thick with a malevolent presence. The explorers tried to leave, but the path they had taken was gone, replaced by an endless maze of tunnels. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. The whispers returned, now clear and menacing. "Leave this place," they warned. "You are not welcome." Sophie felt a cold hand grip her shoulder, and she turned to see a figure cloaked in shadow. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its presence filled her with terror. The figure raised a skeletal hand, and the chamber began to shake. The walls cracked, and the ground beneath them opened into a yawning chasm. The explorers clung to each other, their fear palpable. The figure spoke again, its voice echoing through the chamber. "You have disturbed the resting place of the damned. You must pay the price." One by one, the explorers were pulled into the chasm, their screams echoing in the darkness. Sophie struggled, but the figure's grip was unrelenting. She felt herself falling, the darkness closing in around her. She awoke in a small, dimly lit room, her friends lying unconscious beside her. The figure stood over them, its eyes now filled with sorrow. "You are fortunate," it said. "You have been given a second chance. Leave this place and never return." Sophie helped her friends to their feet, and they stumbled out of the chamber, guided by the figure's light. They emerged into the catacombs, shaken but alive. As they ascended to the surface, they vowed never to speak of what had happened. The entrance they had used was sealed once more, and the tunnels they had explored were forgotten, their secrets buried beneath the city. Sophie and her friends left Paris, forever haunted by their encounter with the darkness beneath the city of light. In Buenos Aires, where tango music fills the air and the streets are alive with energy, there stands an old theater, abandoned and decaying. Known as the Teatro Fantasma, it was once a grand venue, but a tragic fire had closed its doors forever. One summer, a group of theater enthusiasts decided to explore the Teatro Fantasma, hoping to uncover its history and perhaps reignite its former glory. They entered through a broken window, the theater's grandeur now shrouded in dust and shadows. The air was thick with the scent of mildew, and the seats were covered in a fine layer of ash. As they moved through the theater, they heard faint music, a haunting melody that seemed to come from the stage. Drawn by the sound, they approached the stage, its once vibrant curtains now tattered and charred. One of the enthusiasts, Maria, felt a chill as she stepped onto the stage. The music grew louder, more insistent, and she saw a figure standing in the wings. It was a woman, dressed in an old-fashioned gown, her face pale and sorrowful. Maria called to her friends, but they saw nothing. The woman began to dance, her movements graceful but filled with a deep sadness. Maria watched, entranced, as the ghostly performance unfolded. The woman's eyes met hers, and Maria felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of sorrow and longing. The music reached a crescendo, and the woman stopped, her expression turning to one of despair. She pointed to the back of the stage, where a large, blackened door stood. Maria approached the door, her heart pounding. She pushed it open and found herself in a small, dimly lit room. The air was cold, and the walls were covered in old playbills and photographs. In the center of the room stood a piano, its keys yellowed and cracked. Maria felt a presence behind her and turned to see the woman standing there, tears streaming down her face. "You must help me," the woman whispered, her voice filled with anguish. "I am trapped here, unable to find peace." Maria realized that the woman was a former performer, one of the many who had perished in the fire. Her spirit was bound to the theater, unable to move on. Determined to help, Maria and her friends began researching the theater's history. They discovered that the fire had been started by a jealous rival, intent on destroying the theater and its performers. The woman, a rising star, had been the target of the rival's hatred. They shared their findings with the local community, and a memorial was established in honor of the victims. The theater was restored, its doors reopened to the public. On opening night, the theater was filled with the music and laughter of a new generation. Maria returned to the stage, hoping to see the ghostly dancer one last time. The woman appeared before her, her expression no longer one of sorrow but of gratitude. Thank you, she said, her voice soft and clear. I can finally find peace." As Maria watched, the woman began to dance, her movements filled with joy and freedom. The music swelled, and the theater was filled with a sense of warmth and light. The woman's spirit faded, leaving the stage empty but no longer haunted. The Teatro Fantasma became a symbol of resilience and renewal, its dark past transformed into a beacon of hope. Maria and her friends continued to visit, their hearts forever touched by their encounter with the Phantom of Buenos Aires. Moscow, with its grand architecture and rich history, is a city of contrasts. Amid the bustling streets and towering buildings, there are places where the past lingers, and the spirits of the dead are said to roam. One winter, a group of students decided to explore the city's haunted sites. They were particularly intrigued by the old Kovenskoye Cemetery, known for its eerie atmosphere and ghostly apparitions. They arrived at dusk, the snow-covered ground crunching beneath their feet. As they entered the cemetery, the air grew colder, and a thick fog settled over the graves. The students moved cautiously, their flashlights casting long shadows on the tombstones. They heard faint whispers, carried on the wind, and felt a sense of being watched. One of the students, Ivan, felt a strange pull towards an old, crumbling mausoleum. He approached it, the air growing colder with each step. Inside, he found a small, dimly lit chamber. The walls were lined with old portraits, their eyes seeming to follow him. In the center of the room stood a figure, cloaked in darkness. Its eyes glowed with a cold, blue light, and its presence filled the chamber with a sense of dread. Ivan felt a chill run down his spine as the figure spoke, its voice a hollow whisper. "You should not be here." The other students joined Ivan, their expressions filled with fear and curiosity. The figure stepped forward, its form shifting and ethereal. "We are the wraiths of Moscow," it said. "Bound to this place by sorrow and betrayal." The students listened in horror as the figure recounted the tragic stories of those buried in the cemetery. Many had died in the city's darkest times, their spirits unable to find peace. The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and the air grew colder. "You must help us," the figure pleaded. "Our souls are trapped, unable to move on." Ivan felt a surge of compassion and fear. He and his friends vowed to uncover the truth and bring justice to the restless spirits. They spent the following weeks researching the cemetery's history, uncovering tales of betrayal, murder, and sorrow. They shared their findings with local historians and the media, sparking a renewed interest in the cemetery's past. A memorial was established, honoring the lives of those who had suffered and died in the city's darkest times. The cemetery, once a place of fear, became a symbol of remembrance and respect. Ivan returned to the mausoleum one last time, hoping to see the wraiths again. The figure appeared before him, its eyes now filled with gratitude. Thank you," it said, its voice soft and clear. We can finally find peace." As Ivan watched, the wraiths faded into the darkness, their presence lifting from the cemetery. The air grew warmer, and the fog began to dissipate. The students left Moscow, forever changed by their encounter with the wraiths of the city's past. The Kovenskoye Cemetery remains a place of remembrance, its dark history transformed into a beacon of hope. Ivan and his friends continue to visit, their hearts forever touched by the spirits they had helped to free. London, a city steeped in history and tradition, is home to many haunted places. One of the most notorious is the Blackwood Manor, an old, decaying mansion said to be cursed by the spirits of its former inhabitants. One foggy autumn, a group of friends decided to spend a night in the Blackwood Manor, hoping to uncover its secrets. They entered through the wrought iron gates, the manor looming before them, its windows dark and foreboding. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and decay. As they explored the manor, they felt a sense of unease. The walls were covered in portraits of the Blackwood family, their eyes seeming to follow the intruders. One of the friends, Emily, felt a strange pull towards the library. She entered the room, the air growing colder. The shelves were lined with dusty books, and a large fireplace dominated the far wall. As she approached, she saw a figure standing by the hearth. It was a woman, dressed in a Victorian gown, her face pale and sorrowful. Emily felt a chill as the woman turned to face her. "You should not be here," the woman said, her voice a hollow whisper. This place is cursed." The other friends joined Emily, their expressions filled with fear and curiosity. The woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "We are the spirits of the Blackwood family," she said. "Bound to this place by a curse." The friends listened in horror as the woman recounted the tragic history of the Blackwood family. The manor had been the site of countless betrayals, murders, and sorrows. The family's spirits were trapped, unable to find peace. "You must help us," the woman pleaded. "Our souls are bound to this place, unable to move on." Emily felt a surge of compassion and fear. She and her friends vowed to uncover the truth and break the curse. They spent the following weeks researching the manor's history, uncovering tales of betrayal, murder, and sorrow. They shared their findings with local historians and the media, sparking a renewed interest in the manor's dark past. A memorial was established, honoring the lives of the Blackwood family and those who had suffered in the manor. The curse was broken, and the spirits were finally freed. Emily returned to the manor one last time, hoping to see the spirits again. The woman appeared before her, her eyes now filled with gratitude. Thank you, she said, her voice soft and clear. We can finally find peace. As Emily watched, the spirits faded into the darkness, their presence lifting from the manor. The air grew warmer, and the fog began to dissipate. The friends left London, forever changed by their encounter with the cursed spirits of Blackwood Manor. The Blackwood Manor remains a place of remembrance, its dark history transformed into a beacon of hope. Emily and her friends continue to visit, their hearts forever touched by the spirits they had helped to free. Salem, a city infamous for its witch trials and dark history, is a place where the past lingers and the spirits of the wrongfully accused are said to roam. One autumn, a group of friends decided to visit Salem, hoping to explore its haunted sites and uncover its secrets. They arrived in the evening, the air crisp and the leaves rustling in the wind. They made their way to Gallows Hill, the site where many accused witches had been hanged. The hill was shrouded in fog, and the air was thick with the weight of history. One of the friends, Sarah, felt a strange pull towards a small, overgrown path leading into the woods. She followed it, the air growing colder with each step. The others followed, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the trees. They came upon a small clearing, dominated by an ancient, twisted tree. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Sarah felt a chill as she approached the tree, and she saw a figure standing beneath its branches. It was a woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, her face pale and sorrowful. Sarah felt a surge of fear and compassion as the woman turned to face her. "You should not be here," the woman said, her voice a hollow whisper. This place is cursed." The other friends joined Sarah, their expressions filled with fear and curiosity. The woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "I am one of the wrongfully accused," she said. "My spirit is bound to this place, unable to find peace." The friends listened in horror as the woman recounted her tragic story. She had been accused of witchcraft and hanged on Gallows Hill. Her spirit, and the spirits of others who had suffered the same fate, were trapped, unable to move on. "You must help us," the woman pleaded. "Our souls are bound to this place, unable to find peace." Sarah felt a surge of compassion and fear. She and her friends vowed to uncover the truth and bring justice to the restless spirits. They spent the following weeks researching the witch trials, uncovering tales of betrayal, false accusations, and sorrow. They shared their findings with local historians and the media, sparking a renewed interest in the history of Salem. A memorial was established, honoring the lives of those who had been wrongfully accused and hanged on Gallows Hill. The spirits, once trapped in their sorrow, began to find peace. Sarah returned to Gallows Hill one last time, hoping to see the spirits again. The woman appeared before her, her eyes now filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft and clear. "We can finally find peace." As Sarah watched, the spirits faded into the darkness, their presence lifting from the hill. The air grew warmer, and the fog began to dissipate. The friends left Salem, forever changed by their encounter with the spirits of the past. Gallows Hill remains a place of remembrance, its dark history transformed into a beacon of hope. Sarah and her friends continue to visit, their hearts forever touched by the spirits they had helped to free. In the heart of Rio de Janeiro, nestled among the steep hills and winding cobblestone streets, lies the neighborhood of Santa Teresa. Known for its bohemian charm, the area is also infamous for its eerie legends. One such legend revolves around an abandoned mansion, the Casa das Almas Perdidas. Isabella, a young journalist eager to make her mark, decided to investigate the mansion for a piece on Rio's haunted locales. Despite warnings from the locals, she ventured into the decrepit building as dusk fell, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper her name. Her colleagues at the newspaper had dared her, teasing her with the tales of the haunted house, but her curiosity outweighed her fear. The mansion, once home to a wealthy family, had fallen into ruin after a series of tragic events. The family was said to have dabbled in dark rituals, leading to their mysterious deaths. As Isabella explored the dusty rooms, she felt an inexplicable chill. She found a diary belonging to the family's youngest daughter, Maria, detailing her descent into madness and the sinister presence that haunted the mansion. June 14, 1925. Father has changed. He speaks to the shadows in the cellar. Mother cries at night, but no one hears her. I see the dark figure standing at the foot of my bed. Isabella shivered as she read Maria's final entries. Her flashlight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the cracked walls. The air grew colder, and she heard faint, disembodied whispers echoing through the hallways, urging her to leave. Ignoring them, she pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. The house seemed alive, breathing and watching her every move. In the grand ballroom, she saw a shadowy figure, a young girl with hollow eyes, her dress tattered and stained. A voce neo deveria estar aqui, the ghostly figure whispered before vanishing into the darkness. Isabella's heart pounded in her chest, but she was driven by a journalist's determination to find the story. Panicked, Isabella tried to leave, but the heavy wooden doors slammed shut with a deafening crash. She realized she was not alone. The spirits of the family trapped her, reenacting their final moments. The air grew heavy with their sorrow and rage. Desperate, Isabella recited a prayer she had learned from her grandmother, hoping to appease them. The mansion seemed to pulse with energy as the spirit's tragic history unfolded before her eyes. She saw visions of the father, a man driven mad by his obsession with the occult, performing rituals in a hidden cellar. His wife, once beautiful and lively, now a ghostly figure wandering the halls in eternal mourning. And Maria, the innocent child caught in the middle, her spirit forever bound to the house. In the morning, the locals found Isabella outside the mansion, unconscious but alive. Her colleagues rushed to her side, their faces pale with worry. She had been missing for hours, yet it felt like days to her. She left Santa Teresa, never speaking of that night again. But the legend of the Casa das Almas Perdidas grew, with whispers that the spirits had found a new host in Isabella, forever linking her to the haunted past of Rio de Janeiro. Years later, Isabella became a renowned journalist, but she could never shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her dreams were plagued by visions of the mansion, the dark figure always lurking just out of sight. She knew the spirits were still with her, their tragic story forever intertwined with her own. In the morning, the locals found her outside the mansion, unconscious but alive. She left Santa Teresa, never speaking of that night again. But the legend of the Casa das Almas Perdidas grew, with whispers that the spirits had found a new host in Isabella, forever linking her to the haunted past of Rio de Janeiro. In the vibrant city of Madrid, the flamenco culture is deeply ingrained in its history. However, one particular tale of a cursed flamenco dancer, La Llorona de Flamenco, has haunted the city for centuries. Lucia, a talented dancer, was the star of a renowned flamenco troupe. They performed at El Corral de la Mireria, a famous tableau known for its passionate performances. Lucia's beauty and skill captivated audiences, but her fame came with a price. The tableau was a place of intense emotion, where the line between passion and madness was thin. One night, after a particularly mesmerizing performance, an enigmatic old woman approached Lucia, offering her a peculiar amulet.
Y este amuleto te dará poder, pero a un precio estigworn, gerais glinting with a strange light.
Desiring fame and fortune, Lucia accepted it, ignoring the ominous tone. The old woman's warning faded from her mind as she reveled in the adoration of her fans. From that night, Lucia's performances became otherworldly, her movements mesmerizing and almost supernatural. Her fame skyrocketed, and she was the talk of Madrid. But soon, strange occurrences began. She saw shadows dancing along with her, and heard mournful wails during rehearsals. Her fellow dancers grew fearful, claiming to see a spectral figure mimicking Lucia's every move. Lucia discovered the old woman was a gypsy who had cursed the amulet, binding Lucia's soul to the spirit of a vengeful dancer who died tragically in the same tableau centuries ago. This spirit, La Llorona de Flamenco, sought to reclaim her stolen life through Lucia. The legend told of a dancer named Isabella, who had been the star of the tableau long before Lucia, and whose life ended in a tragic accident. Some said it was jealousy, others a curse, but her spirit never left. As her performances drew larger crowds, Lucia's health deteriorated. She grew gaunt, her eyes hollow. Desperate to break the curse, she sought the old woman, only to find her gravestone instead. The curse could only be broken by sacrificing the amulet at midnight in the cemetery where the gypsy was buried. On the fateful night, Lucia performed her final, haunting dance. As the clock struck midnight, she shattered the amulet on the gravestone. A wail echoed through the cemetery as the spirit was released, and Lucia collapsed. Her fellow dancers, who had followed her in secret, watched in horror as the spectral figure of Isabella emerged, then slowly faded into the night. Lucia survived, but was never the same. She left the stage forever, the legend of La Llorona de Flamenco continuing to haunt Madrid's flamenco community. El Corral de la Mireia remains a popular destination, but the tale of the cursed dancer serves as a chilling reminder of the price of fame. The tableau's patrons still speak in hushed tones of the night Lucia danced with the ghost, and some claim to hear the mournful cries of La Llorona during the quiet moments between performances. Lucia, now a shadow of her former self, lives a quiet life away from the spotlight. She cannot bear to hear the strains of flamenco music, for it brings back memories of the curse she narrowly escaped. Yet, she knows that the spirit of Isabella is finally at peace, and that her own brush with the supernatural has left her with a story that no one else could ever truly understand.